Greg Hunter.
So, Jordan, specifically, what kind of challenges Sam Ehlinger bring?
I just did a phone interview. I think watching him, especially over the last 2 years, I think he's probably the best competitor in our league. Talent, I think, speaks for itself, but a lot of things that he does, that a lot of plays he makes, it's almost like he kind of wills them, and that's competitiveness. And got a lot of respect for that kid. He plays hard. He makes them go. He's a huge challenge.
Michael Sussman.
What have you seen on film so far from Texas's offensive line, and what are you guys going to have to do to put pressure on Sam Ehlinger?
They're probably the best I've seen up to this point of picking things up. Twist game wise, they do a really good job in protection. Ehlinger gives him the opportunity to do what he likes to do, which is make plays on the run. They give him enough time to do that. And when people try to, whether it's pick and roll and try to find a way to get to him, they do a good job of picking it up. They're pretty simple in the run game, which I think any team that's good at running the football is schematically. Allows those guys to play fast, and they do a good job.
Mike Kazaza.
Hey, Jordan, I asked Neil this question, and I don't really know where I'm going with it, and he didn't have a great answer, so you got a pretty low bar to clear here. But I asked him, I noticed that Tony's assists for tackles are about twice as many as solos, which is a strange proportion, but it also may speak to the way that he's flying around, or maybe the way that you guys want people to follow the leader there and be active and get to the ball. Does that stat mean anything as far as how you're performing?
The next time that you have a question for any of the defensive linemen, that's the one stat I talk about more than any other stat is assisted tackles, because what that tells me is you're around the football. So yeah, that stat matters a lot. It's my number one stat. As far as individual statistics, sacks are one thing, tackles for loss are one thing. You either get those by your talent level or the scheme creates them, but assisted tackles is simply a choice to be around the football. All right, and if you have those, and you can anytime Darius or Dante, any of those guys you have in here, and you ask them, that's one thing that I talk about with those guys. Is if I look at assisted tackles at the end of the year, and there's especially a linebacker or defensive lineman that have a high number of those, well, that tells me what I need to know about your effort, because you're around the football. It's pretty simple. So yeah, that means a lot to me.
Greg Hunter.
So, Jordan, we've talked a lot about Darius, and obviously he's played well, but have you ever had a nose guard that's as versatile as he's played defensive end for you? He played a lot of snaps at D tackle this past week. So just his versatility for a guy that normally is a nose guard, where's that rate?
I've never had one that versatile. I've had only one that's that explosive, who's plays for the 49ers now. Is very similar in height. I mean, DJ Jones is 310 pounds, and Darius would not be able to carry 310 pounds like DJ does. But the explosiveness, they're the same. Versatility, they're not. Darius can play more positions than DJ could. DJ was strictly a nose guard. Now, he was a really good nose guard and still is. But Darius can play any position up front, and that's, if you can get 5 or 6 or 7 of those, you got something. So,
Cody Nesper.
Hey, Jordan. So Ehlinger's, other than Charlie Brewer, Ehlinger's really going to be the only real experienced quarterback you faced so far. Is there a big difference between preparing for a quarterback that has played a ton of games and you have a bunch of film on him versus, these guys you have been playing that, they're getting their first career starts or real first career, snaps?
The difference comes in how the scheme is called and executed. I think that anybody that we have played that is in that situation, probably like anybody normally would, You know, like if I had to put 3 freshman D linemen out there, well, I can't do the same things that I was trying to do with 3 juniors or seniors. So I think it's probably a little bit of a simplification that goes on with an inexperienced or a younger guy, and sometimes that's good for them. I mean, it allows them to play fast and know what to do, and the execution is probably a little better sometimes when you do that. Now with Ellinger, I mean, his record and his playmaking ability speaks for itself. They don't allow him to do anything outside of their. I mean, they don't ask him to do anything outside of their scheme. Which again allows them to play fast and execute that scheme, and he's really good at it, and he's done it for a long time. So there's a difference in preparation. I mean, you still got to prepare for the scheme as well as the player, and so he fits their scheme perfectly, and it makes it a challenge.
John?
Curious, I don't know, you may have touched on this. I stepped out for a minute, but the decision to use Messidor as a stand-up linebacker in that instance against Kansas State, is that a product of the Stills brothers up front playing off that? Is that Messidor's athletic ability, or is that just the evolution of where you've come 6 games into the season?
It's probably a little bit of all 3. You know, Akeem is. You know, a lot of times pass rushing is such a natural thing, and along with playing within our defense, if you look at tackles for loss with guys that, you know, that have those statistics, negative plays, a lot of times those guys have a knack for either rushing the passer or finding the ball. A lot of times that's natural, and Akeem has that natural ability. How you choose to use it as a coach is up to each individual coach. There's one thing that I know about Darius is he requires a lot of attention, and so you can use that a lot of times to get that attention to go one way, and you come back another way with whatever you're trying to do and with whoever you're trying to do it with. And a lot of times it's about identification with the offensive line is what they're when you figure out what they're trying to ID, and you can disguise that, then you do that. But, you know, at the end of the day, Akeem's a 265-pound kid that can run. And so him coming through there like that and get him isolated on a running back in protection, that's normally a win.
I'm assuming the more things you can get an offense to adjust and prepare for, the better when it comes to things like that.
I mean, yeah, but there's always a rhyme and reason why you do it. And if you don't have a rhyme or reason to do it, then don't do it just to say that you're quote unquote exotic. Just if it has a rhyme or reason, yes. If it doesn't, then no. Do what your kids feel comfortable with and what allows them to play fast. And that was just something that we come across that I thought had a lot of merit with how Kansas State protected their quarterback. And once I knew that we started getting to him, you know, the Howard kid being a younger kid, that's, you know, we ran that one play, and that one play paid off. So we got the use that we needed out of it and the situation that we needed out of it.
Go ahead, Kirk.
Yeah, Coach, what would you say is the best quality you've seen out of the defense so far this year? And could you name one of your players who's maybe come the furthest through the first half of this season?
You know, the thing that sticks out to me more than anything, I think it's always the stat that tells you how hard your guys are playing. And if you look at tackling, and we just talked about it with Tony, assisted tackles. If you're not missing a lot of tackles, then you're playing hard. And if you're playing hard, you have a chance. Because a lot of times in this league, with the skill players that you see, and how people are trying to use them in space, missed tackles are going to happen, especially when you get defensive linemen and inside linebackers out in that space and fundamentally make a clean tackle when the kid that has the ball is clearly more athletic or faster or whatever it may be. So those are going to happen. Now, if you're missing at the second guy, the third guy, the fourth guy, that's when you have the issue. So the thing that sticks out mostly to me is tackling, which is effort. And that's all we talk about. That's all we talk about perfect effort. That's all that's the only thing you can be perfect at in football is your effort. And that's the only thing they control. Coaches should control the rest of it. So that's the one thing. You know, I think there's two kids that stick out that have, and I'll mention a third, that have really this year have done a phenomenal job for us. Number one is Jeff Pooler at the level that he's playing at. And if you watch film on Jeff and the things he's doing, that kind of probably get overshadowed a little bit by Darius and Dante, and even Akeem to a certain extent. But Jeff's playing really good football right now, and it's really because he's playing hard. And number two is Josh Chandler. Josh has had a couple of plays this year where it maybe looked a little bit like last year, but the number is definitely way less. And he's really come on. He's become a leader in that group. He really feeds off Tony. They're kind of taking this thing by the reins, hopefully, and rolling with it. And you know, the other one that I'll mention that's doing some things really well that do not show up on a stat sheet that I get asked a lot about is Dante Stills. Dante has a couple of plays, especially from last Saturday. The reason that Tony and Josh had 4 or 5 tackles was because a couple of things Dante was doing inside that single-handedly was forcing that ball to go to where we wanted it to go. And if that ball stays in there, he makes it, but that's not the design of what we're trying to do. And I think Dante understands that. Sometimes he gets a little frustrated. I mean, Dante's a competitor. He's a really good player, and really good players want to make a lot of plays. So where I tell him the really good things he's doing, it's not showing up on a stat sheet, but it's really helpful right now to our defense.
Final 2 questions for Coach. Chuck Landon.
Hey, Jordan, what have you got to do? What do you try to do to get Ellinger out of his comfort zone?
Well, I think anytime that you can get to any quarterback and hit him, you know, not anything egregious or anything. Just if you can just get there and make contact with him, just to get him on that back foot, then it's an advantage for you. If you know, it's kind of it's like boxing, you know, body blows. If you can get those landed, get him off of his spot, then that's with any quarterback. That's what you're trying to do. The problem with Ellinger is he's pretty good when he's off his spot. If you look at his plays, so you know we've got to be able to plaster on the receivers that we need to. We got to be able to keep him from getting north and south on us and pulling that ball down, and making the plays just strictly with his feet that he normally does. You know, it's one thing that hurt us last year is touchdown going into the south end zone toward the hospital that really hurt us. Key point in that game, and he did it with his feet.
And back to Mike.
Jordan, they've fallen behind a couple times this year, and Ellinger just kind of, it almost seems like sandlots it back into it the way he's playing. They're going fast, and that's just kind of his experience, I'm sure. But it's a challenge for the defense. But you guys have had 2 big leads in conference play and uneventful from there. How have you seen your defense respond to protecting leads?
I mean, every situation is different. You know, we've done a good job at times, and you know, the other day at the end of the first half, we didn't do a good job. We didn't make key third down plays, and we give up a shot play, and we busted the coverage. So overall, we've done pretty decent. We got to do better. You know, a team like Kansas State last week they play good from behind. So does Texas. So you know, if we're fortunate enough to be in that position, you know, we got to keep our foot on the gas. And so And it's really just it's more than anything. It's just focus. You just got to stay focused and knowing that those situations, if you let them slip, will come back to bite you later in games. I always do. We got lucky last Saturday; it didn't, but they normally do.